Everyone, and welcome to the third session of AECC's Let's Talk Health Science series. My name is Carmen. I'm an education counselor here at AECC, and I will be your host for this session. Maybe we'll allow a few more seconds for more participants to join us. Meanwhile, I would like to let you know that AECC is a student placement agency, and we assist students through their overseas university application process. So if you're keen on applying after today's session, please let us know and we'll be happy to help. Also, our services are free. So today we have Ms. Ananthi, Regional Manager International of Student Recruitment and Admissions at Monash University, who will be talking to us about their pharmacy program, as well as Dr. Gurian Ang, Associate Lecturer at the Faculty of Science, and Mr. Bernard Kong, Country Manager of Recruitment in Singapore, both from the University of Queensland, who will be telling us more about the vet science program. I'll be asking Ananthi and Dr. Ang some questions about the two programs, which all of you want to hear about. And then we'll get your questions answered too. So please go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A box throughout the session. So if you're asking a specific question to a specific university, please specify which university you're asking to. And you can also ask anonymously if you're shy. Okay, we'll also be putting up a poll, so we'll appreciate if you could let us know through the poll which of these two programs you're interested in. Okay, so with that, maybe let me start the session. Maybe I can start with asking Ananthi. Can you give us an introduction of yourself and the pharmacy program at Monash, please?
Thanks, Carmen, for the introduction. Yes, my name is Ananthi, as she has mentioned, and I'm from the International Student Recruitment and Admissions. Having worked with Monash for 10 years, for today, I'll be representing my faculty, which is the Faculty of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science. As we all know, every pharmacy degree in Australia offers a 5-year pathway to register as a pharmacist. Our pathway takes the same amount of time to start and finish, but instead of graduating with 1 degree, a student will actually graduate with 2, which is a master's program as well as a bachelor with honors. In other words, a student will have an advantage over every other pharmacy graduate in the country, as it for Monash is one of a kind in Australia. And the good news is, in the 5th year of the course entails an internship. So it's just not a degree, a valuable work experience that the student will get, but they will also get paid for it. But also, if students do not want to progress with the master's program, they can always exit with the 4-year Bachelor of Pharmacy honors. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Ananthi. So over to Dr. Ang. Would you tell us about yourself and the vet science program at UQ, please?
Thanks, Carmen, and to all of our friends in Singapore and Malaysia. Good evening to you all. In case you were interested, both Ananthi and I are on the eastern seaboard of Australia, and we're 2 hours ahead of you all. It's 10 p.m. here tonight, and I think I understand from Ananthi we're getting to enjoy the full moon a little bit better, or maybe slightly ahead of time for before it reaches you all. I'm Gurian, and here in Australia we are all largely on a first name basis. So please feel free to call me Gurian. Although some of the students here call me Dr. G. I am originally from Singapore, and now I teach here at the university. I teach ecology and zoology, so the study of animals, and of course, then the abundance and distribution of those animals in nature. Today we will, on behalf of UQ, will focus on our 5-year Bachelor of Veterinary Science Honours program. This is an undergraduate program that's accredited both by the Australian, by the US, and by the UK veterinary boards, largely meaning to say that with a degree like the Bachelor of Vet Science, you pretty much can practice virtually anywhere in the world. So really quite excited to be talking to you all about this program, and I think it's really timely in this day and age. I know most of you are still very young, but if you're anything like me, you will probably have considered very seriously that you are probably not going to have children And the reason for that is because pets offer a much more interesting and more rewarding relationship, some people think. I myself do not have kids. I have 3 dogs here, and every time I come home, they're so excited to be waiting for me at the door, waiting for me to come home. I don't think your children will ever be so excited to be waiting for you when you get home. But I guess jokes aside, we are seeing a significant increase in I guess the interest in pet keeping. And here in Australia, it's not exclusive to your cute and cuddly dogs and animals. You get to work with exotic species, larger domesticated species, and of course, as you might be familiar, Australia home to a variety of wildlife. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So now, before we move on to more details about the program, can I just get some clarification for students who are here because of their interest in working with animals? What's the difference between vet science and animal science? And how do I decide which one to study?
Yeah, that's a good question. So animal science is not, in terms of the name explicitly, that's not something we have at the undergraduate level. So I think the thing that is worth being clear about here is that the vet science program at UQ is very unique compared to a lot of other universities in that it is an undergraduate program. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the term, that what that means is that immediately upon completing your studies, you know, from Singapore, whether you finish your A-levels, you finish your polytechnic diploma, in Malaysia, you finish your IB or your A-levels if you're in an international school, or the mainstream, I guess, Malaysian national exams, you can start the vet science program, of course, depending on how well you've done at school. But you can start the vet science program typically at the undergraduate level. Okay, so that's one thing that's really important, and I apologize if I didn't make that clear earlier on. Animal science, though, is not something we offer explicitly at the undergraduate level, but there are many shapes and forms in which you can, you know, pursue your interest in studying about animals, and they include things like our Bachelor of Wildlife Science or our Bachelor of Science, and then choosing to major in something like zoology. So I guess you need to think about what aspect of working with animals you might like to be a part of. If you are interested in considering things like animal health, or maybe going into a little bit of research that will specifically treat ailments and diseases associated with animal health, whether that is your cute and cuddly domesticated household pets, or larger livestock animals, right from poultry all the way to you know, your cows and horses, or even wild animals, then maybe vet science is for you. If, however, you're more interested in things like the animal biology, animal husbandry, ethics, animal welfare, animal physiology, behavior, then you probably want to think of a career where you might be either looking at research, so looking at how we can study and better understand these animals, or even, in fact, working in many, you know, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, zoos, so on and so forth. And if you're looking for that sort of career, then maybe something like wildlife science or zoology is more suitable for you. So that really is the distinction.
I see, that clears up the confusion. So speaking of similar courses, there is also a course that seems very similar to pharmacy, and that is Pharmaceutical Science. So Ananti, can you give us some insights into the difference between these two programs, please?
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. It's pretty unusual because for Monash University, we have 200 over degrees. We have 10 faculties. The only courses that we don't have is actually vet science and animal, you know. So it's really great to hear from Dr. G regarding the differences, which makes more sense to me now. And obviously, Malaysia and Singapore being a very mature market, there's always a frequently asked question when I'm counseling parents, students, and even career counselors at school. What's the difference between pharmacy and pharmaceutical science? Hence, you know, basically, if you want to have the recognition and accreditation is required for this professional course to become a pharmacist, so that you are able to actually, you know, dispense or advise on drugs over the counter. So pharmacy aside, it's just the pharmaceutical science, which is pretty interesting because at the unprecedented COVID situation now, I guess we are getting a lot more inquiries on pharmaceutical science. Therefore, as Australia's leading faculty of pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, I would say we are actually at the forefront of both research and education in our field. If students are very much curious and prefer to work in a lab, probably pharmaceutical science might be more suitable for them, because it's purely a lot more research undertaken by leading pharmaceutical scientists, which will be having an impact on health around the globe. Like I said, one of our success include a joint design and development of an influenza treatment, Relenza. It's a collaborative design of a potential single-dose malaria treatment, and how these new approaches to delivering drugs to the body more effectively. So our challenging undergraduate, postgraduate, and research within the pharmaceutical sciences course will prepare students for frontline roles in modern patient care and drug discovery and development. So rest assured that pharmaceutical scientists are highly employable locally and also internationally. You will definitely find them in hospital communities, research centers, and drug companies around the world. So it's just not pharmacies, but currently pharmaceutical scientists are also highly regarded at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Right, so pharmaceutical science is more of research on discovering and developing drugs, while pharmacy is more clinical in nature, focusing on working with patients to dispense the medication.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So before I continue, just a reminder for everyone to participate in the poll to let us know which program you are interested in, please. Okay, so moving on. Now that we know a bit about the programs, the next important question for Ananti would be, why should students choose to study pharmacy at Monash? What facilities and support are there for them?
That's a very good question, Carmen. Our pharmacy course has been long considered as the leading pharmacy program in Australia. So students will become an expert on how medicine interacts with the body to play a vital role in improving public health. Therefore, I think in terms of the support that we get, our student will gain is we have a very good learning environment and technology in which the faculty is committed to providing a world-class learning environment and technologies for students and staff. They have just recently invested about 75 million to redevelop the teaching laboratories and build practice environment for students to develop skills in pharmacy practice and also in the pharmaceutical sciences. There's another thing that the faculty have emphasized a lot more in terms of the facilities, in which we call sharing and collaborating. The faculty is strongly committed to internal and external collaborations, as we know. Evidence of their belief and the value of the partnership includes, we have this very unique development, which is called Pharmatopia, which is currently extends to 12 leading international pharmacy schools and a collaborative program with some of the pharmaceutical companies for skills development and training. We also been hosting a pharmacy education symposium. This is pretty interesting because it's actually kind of like originated from Prato, which create opportunities for pharmacy educators to explore teaching and learning in terms of the development of SABLE. SABLE actually stands for sharing and building educational resources, which is open global resources services for pharmacy and around the globe, contributing to also National Alliance of Pharmacy Education, which provides internship and postgraduate education. So I guess with all this investment in terms of learning environment and technologies, there'll be lots of support for students when they're actually pursuing the course. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananti. It sounds amazing to study pharmacy at Monash. I'm sure Gurian will also have some information to share about why students should choose UQ for vet science, and also the facilities and support that students can expect. Over to you, Gurian.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. So you need to walk away from this with 4 key points about our vet science program, and at the same time I'll simultaneously answer one of the questions that's in the Q&A. One, as I already mentioned, this is a direct entry at the undergraduate level. Okay, in other words, you can immediately enter in your first year at university in a vet science program, which also answers one of the questions that have come from you. Thank you very much for the question. And whether there's a difference between vet science and vet medicine. Well, the difference is in the name. So the vet medicine and vet science will both ultimately lead you down the same career path. Of course, at UQ, you start that immediately at the undergraduate level and for 5 years. In other words, in other universities where you typically have a doctor of vet medicine, you would typically finish an undergraduate degree in, say, animal science or animal physiology, and then go on and continue a doctor of vet medicine, which will take you a much longer time than our 5-year program. Okay, so one thing is it's undergraduate, 5 years. Second thing, triple accreditation. As I mentioned, the Australian board, the UK board, and the US board recognize this program. There is no other undergraduate vet science program that's triple accredited from Australia. The Australian board allows you to practice in Australia and New Zealand. The UK board allows you to practice in most parts of Europe, and back in Singapore and Malaysia is where you need the UK accreditation. And the US, of course, allows you to practice in the US and Canada. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, of course, I guess we're constantly thinking about, oh, what about, industry relevance, and work integrated learning. That starts from your first year in the vet science program. So already in the first year of your vet science program, you have approximately, about a couple hundred hours of work integrated sort of learning, right through to your 4th year, where you again have clinical placements and do you do your clinical code ceremony in your 4th year, and then you start learning about surgery in an animal specific way, and then right down to your 5th year, which is your full-time 1,300 hours plus of placement throughout your 5th year. Okay, so it's very industry relevant, and of course we also have access to an actual clinic on campus, right? So you'll be learning about practice, and I guess in many ways you learn quite a bit on the job, and there's also access to those sort of small animal clinics on campus. And then on a more, I guess, more thoughtful on a more thoughtful note, the 4th thing is, of course, you might be considering vet science because you have a pet dog or a pet cat, okay, or a pet hamster or terrapin, and you maybe are considering that, oh, maybe in the future I might like to work in the health of those particular animals. But remember that that's just one subgroup of lots and lots of different animals, and we're really, really fortunate to be in a really biodiverse place like Queensland to give you all the exposure of lots and lots of different animals in the same spot. And they, of course, include domesticated animals, of course, all of your dogs and your cats, not forgetting your livestock animals, just as important, for everything from your poultry right up, like I said, to your sheep, your goats, your cows, your horses, and of course, many of you, maybe the very, very popular domesticated animal now, alpacas, right? You know what an alpaca is. And then, of course, finally, your exotic and wild animals, and here in Australia, lots of marsupials, and our kangaroos and koalas, our wombats, and so our vet science students do all of them, right? So by hook or by crook, you need to get through all the physiology and understanding of the anatomy and biology of all of them. That is just something for you to have, so that you can go out into your future career ready to take on virtually anything that comes in through the clinic. And not every vet science program offers you that. So those are the 4 things. Okay, direct undergraduate, triple accreditation, lots of work integrated learning and work placement, and then a diversity of animals that you'll have experience in.
Thank you, Gurian. UQ is indeed popular for their undergraduate vet science program. So moving forward, I think students would be interested to know how the course structure is like. So maybe going back to Ananti again, will you please let us know what and how they will be learning in this program, please?
Thanks for the question. Just wanted, before I respond to that, alpacas is actually my favorite thing at the moment because my friend actually has a farm in the regional, with the truffle farm. It's something that, very amazing animals, I would say, pretty adventurous as well. So that kind of brought to my thought. It's really a in thing at the moment, with my fellow friends. Yeah. As what Carmen has mentioned about the course structure, with the pharmacy course, the structure of the course develops through 6 themes. The first 3 being structure and functions of the body, the drug structure, deposition and action. And lastly is the professional practice, which comes together in the final 3 themes later on in terms of comprehensive care, which will develop a lot more inquiries and innovation and professional experience respectively. One of the good thing about this course is it will definitely develop the relevant practical and analytical skills that students require for pharmacy practice, as well as it will also help students in terms of their generic skills, such as oral and written communication. It's just not that, but we also need the student to be a critical thinker, need to inquire, learning for life, as well as information literacy and leadership. So all this has been combined together within the course. So hopefully, that will be really helpful in terms of student mapping out the course and progressing respectively over the years. Thanks, Carmen.
I see. So you mentioned briefly earlier that there will be internships as well. So when will these be and how many hours will it be? Where will they do these internships?
Basically, in terms of the clinical placement, it will be done towards the end of the year, which is basically it's embedded practical experience in which a student which will include about 12 weeks in a variety of clinical settings to develop and also to give context to their skill development. So once the student enter the stage 2, they will undertake the Pharmacy Board of Australia, which requires a pre-registration year, which is including the National Alliance for Pharmacy Education, Intern Training Program, which is commonly known as ITP, which is accredited by the Australian Pharmacy Council. There's lots of big names over here. Obviously, within the practical, which is done in the final year, students will definitely able to develop their skills in the workplace, focusing on the competencies required to practice as a registered pharmacy. They will also need to complete the Monash University Pharmacy Intern Foundation Program, which is known as IFP, that recognizes additional professional knowledge and skill gained while working in a Monash credential training site. So basically, in order to enroll for this program, the intern training program as well as the intern foundation program, students will need to undertake their internship under the supervision of a pharmacist approved by the Pharmacy Board of Australia. So hope that explains the practical component about in the pharmacy program. Thanks, Carmen.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Ananti. How about UQ's Vet Science, Gurian? What will the course cover over the 5 years in terms of course content?
Thanks. So the 5 years is broken down. I'll do this quite generically, but if I can draw everyone's attention to the chat where I've just posted a link to our study planner, and you'll find that if you're not just looking at vet science, you can find a whole suite of other science programs with a study planner. And the benefit of going through a study planner is to actually systematically look at which courses you'll take over the time. But for interest and for the parents watching in the background, for the vet science program, year 1, we're looking at your basic anatomy and physiology. Unfortunately, you can't get away with basic biology and of course your biochemistry. I'm sorry, you cannot get away from that. Okay, so that's year one. Then second year, we move on to your nutrition and disease. Third year, we continue on disease and toxicology. We do a little bit of genetics then. And then in your fourth year is where you start thinking about where to from here, and you start your sort of surgery practice. Then finally, your fifth year is your placement year. So that gives you a quick snapshot of the 5 years of the vet science program. As with many other universities in Australia, you're looking at typically 2 semesters per year. And each semester runs for approximately 13 weeks. We have our semester 1 that runs sometime from end of February, beginning of March, right through to the end of June. You have a nice winter break. So we're in the Southern Hemisphere, so the seasons are swapped. You have a nice winter break across July. Then you begin again at the end of July, semester 2, and you finish your exams in semester 2 by November. So that's your typical structure across the 5 years studying full-time with us.
Thank you. I see you also mentioned about placements already earlier. So I just want to add on to that regarding the placements. So will students be able to do these placements in other states or maybe other countries as well?
No, the placements don't typically happen interstate. Although I must say that Queensland shares a border with New South Wales, and getting from the main city of Brisbane right down to northern part of New South Wales is not very far, and it's not, at most 2 hours, 2-hour drive. We do have students as part of their placements, going to many different parts. I promise you, Australia is a very big place. Queensland is also a very big place. So we have our students dispatched here, there, and everywhere in all parts of Queensland and also northern New South Wales. Now, saying that, I do need to add a disclaimer because all of you are international students thinking about coming to join us for study, that what you will find is when it comes to these placements, there is the expectation that you, in the same way you would in the future work for an employer, there is expectation that you would cover typically the travel costs associated with moving from placement to placement. So that's a question we get quite frequently. So you need to be aware of that. So it is to your advantage if you do have a driver's license and have the means to get from place to place. But please don't stress if that shouldn't be a limitation if you don't drive. That's something you can work with the placement officer to figure out and find something that will work for you. Okay?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you don't drive, you just make friends who drive, right? Yeah.
That is a good way of doing it. And I don't drive until today. I shouldn't be on the road because it's very danger to others. So, and I'm totally 100% with you, Carmen. Why drive when others can drive you? Love it.
Exactly. Okay, so maybe let's go on to something a bit more serious. So let's talk about COVID-19. So COVID-19 has dramatically affected the world in the past 1.5 years. So how has this pandemic affected studies for this program, especially since students in both of these programs have to complete the required placements? Maybe we can start with Guyan.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Yeah, so you're absolutely right in that there's the placement side of things that has to be in person. We'll talk about that shortly. Then of course there's the academic side. So for most of our participants today, I guess the good thing is that the earliest you can join us as an enrolled student in the vet science program is the start of 2022. This is a single intake program. We only take students in at semester 1, and we only take on average, only about 40 students come into the vet science program as international students. Now, with that, right, your first year, your second year, your third year, then your fourth year, when you properly start placement, will be in when 2025. Okay, now if borders, I promise you, will be open by then. Okay, so that's one thing our participants tonight don't have to really worry about, but you might be worried about your day-to-day classes and lectures, because in your first 2 years at least, it's still very lecture and tutorial and practical orientated. You will find that we have the means and capacities to be delivering a lot of this material online, and that's what we've been doing since this time last year. And I think you will find that the feedback from specifically our vet science students to studying online has been incredibly positive. So very shortly, I'll just share with you another link in the chat. And that's a nice little news story specifically from our vet science cohort that shows how we have digitally transformed vet science, including students watching surgeries on animals take place live. And they can ask questions and actually learn more. And I think I want to preface this, and also, you know, on behalf of my colleague at Monash, we're all in this together. You know, all of our academics and all of our support staff are in this together. We are doing our very best, but as universities, we really only can go with what the Australian government allows us to go with. And at this stage, unfortunately, borders are still closed, and we're all doing it together. And I guess the advice I want to give everybody when you're considering your next step is make an informed decision and be very, very clear about prospects over at least the next year or so. And hopefully that helps in making your decision. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So how about the pharmacy program, Ananti? How has COVID-19 affected studies for your program?
I must admit the COVID-19 definitely have affected the placement for the students. Obviously now we do have students onshore in Australia as well as offshore doing it online. But the pharmacy course, I guess the most crucial year will be the third year, whereby there will be an experimental placement, which is unfortunately conducted on site in Melbourne. So this placement include a substantial amount of on-job training. Therefore, they actually designed to give a student enough authentic practice experience so that they are able to safely care for patients. So they are actually often part of the pharmacy course that student would actually rate most highly. So likewise, you know, it's just not pharmacy, but in health profession education programs, you know, this experimental placement are not the university's requirement. They are actually also a requirement for registration as a pharmacist in Australia. So this means that the faculty doesn't have much flexibility to work around the completion of these placement activities. Particularly in the year 3 and 4 of the course, if you're doing the Bachelor of Pharmacy with honors, and obviously the if student want to pursue on with the Masters of Pharmacy. So unfortunately, if students are not able to be in Melbourne, so they are not able to complete their placement, and not completing this placement will definitely impact on their progression in either future years of the course registration as an intern pharmacist. So the thing is, the faculty has actually have dedicated a web page which are handling the students on a case-by-case basis in terms of to plan out the possible placement which is required accordingly. You know, it's either they push it back later in the year, or you know, try to get an intermission. And also we have also need to consider that you know, if students are undergoing certain symptoms like cough, fever, or you know, it's not a COVID symptom, but if they are, that means they are not able to actually move on with their placement at the hospital as well. So things like that are definitely have impacted them, but rest assured the faculty is really working very hard with the students to make those arrangements in place so that eventually they will not have any issues in terms of with their registration with the pharmacy board.
Thank you, Ananti. Let's hope borders will open soon so we'll be able to resume our campus study and placements.
Yeah, that's true. But it's been quite a good experience though. Most of our students, you know, obviously for pharmacy, we only have one intake per year, but students actually have been doing it online, offshore. Will be their second year in running. And I do understand they could actually get apply for travel exemption if they would like to, you know, some of the health courses have been given exemption for them to travel. So I guess the most crucial one will be the third year student for the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now we know the what and the why. I'm sure all of you are eager to find out how you can get a place in these programs. So exact entry requirements, of course, depends on which qualification the students hold. But Ananti, are there any additional admissions tests or specific prerequisite or recommended subjects that students should have in order to qualify for the pharmacy program?
Okay, it's very simple. In order to get to actually get a full offer for the program, student will need to meet two requirements. One is the entry requirement, obviously achieving, we do recognize A-level, ATAR, which is the Australian matriculation, IB, we have, UEC, and even the Singapore Poly, we do have, we do recognize all those qualifications. But on top of that, student will also need to meet the subject prereq, which is English, mathematics, and chemistry. That's it.
So what can the student do if he or she doesn't have these prerequisite subjects?
So basically, there are two options for the student. Option number one is obviously, if they don't meet the requirement and doesn't have the subject prereq, they could actually probably attempt their year 12. We do, for Monash University, we do offer our own foundation. We call it MUFI. MUFI actually stands for Monash University Foundation Year, which is a one-year program, and we can actually package the foundation with the degree. It's a guaranteed entry as long as student meet the requirement, or student is actually eligible for our graduate entry program. So if a student have completed a degree in sciences such as like Bachelor of Biomedical Science, Bachelor of Biomedicine, Pharmaceutical Science, or even a basic Bachelor of Science. So as long as they meet a minimum completion of their undergraduate with 70%, they are actually able to get into our third year of the pharmacy program. Basically, what happened is once they move into the third year of the program, they only have remaining 2 years in order to complete, and they are able to actually sit for the Pharmacy Board of Examination to become a practicing pharmacist. So in summary, there are two pathways. Either they want to attempt their year 12 again, or probably they would like to progress on with those degrees that I've mentioned, which they met the requirement, and reattempt into our graduate entry pharmacy program.
I see. So is there also a quota for this program?
Good news, we don't have. So as long as we can take as many students as possible, as long as they meet the requirement. So I guess we have dedicated one campus purely for the Faculty of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science it's actually at our Parkville campus. So so that's the good news that I have for this program. This is the only program we actually don't have a limitation of places for international students. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's great, Ananti. I hope this has been clear for students who are keen on pharmacy. So not forgetting the aspiring vets, Gurian, can you please enlighten us on whether there are any prerequisite or additional tests for entry into the vet science program, please?
Thank you. So unlike the pharmacy program, Nash, for our international students, we do have a quota. We are hesitant to specify an exact number, but typically it's around 40 students. We do keep a ratio of domestic students, so the students, the Australian and New Zealand citizens, to our international students at about 2:1. So they form a larger collective cohort of about 120 students per cohort. This is very, very deliberate because, as a university, we are responsible for making sure that there are not only enough placements, but then the number of vets that we graduate also is proportional to the industry's demand for them. Okay. In terms of prerequisite, I encourage you again now to draw your attention to the chat, and I've just given you a link there to our future students website specifically for the Vet Science Honours program. Please check that you have changed the setting to an international student, and then there is a tab there that says specifically entry requirements. So similarly, You've got your English, but in terms of subject prerequisites, we expect mathematics, chemistry, and then on top of that, you need to, in addition to the chemistry is compulsory, but then you'll need a second science, and that can be in physics or biology. There is a score cut off, and we accept, similar to the Monash program, a variety of ways that you can get into UQ, whether that's your A levels, your IB, or so on and so forth. Now, in addition to that, for vet science in particular, I think you need to start appreciating that, as nice as it sounds, medicine, whether with animals or with humans, is not for everyone. Okay, and while you might think you have the right aptitude, and your heart and your mind might be in the right place, you may find yourself, after you start, no, this is not for me. You know, I cut open an animal and that's not for me, right? So that's one aspect to it. And there's a lot of mental resilience that we expect in our vet science students. As a result of which, we are making it mandatory for all of our future students to also accompany their application with an aptitude test. This is not a test that you can study for. It is for us to assess your mental and your emotional intelligence. Okay, so like I said, it's not something you can prepare for. There's no, it's not like an SAT or a GAMSAT that you can buy textbooks and prepare for. It gives you certain situations, and we are evaluating your response to those situations to figure out whether or not you're suitable for our program. So you don't actually get the results of your test. The results are confidential and sent directly to us for our own evaluation. And Bernard, who is our Singapore representative, has included that also in the link for you to learn more about what we call the situational judgment test. That's the aptitude test. And this is provided by a service provider known as Casper. And within the website, for those of you genuinely interested, within the Casper website, you'll find out when the next test dates are. And you'll also have some sample sort of questions that you might encounter in this test. And similarly, if the question is, oh my God, the entry requirements are so high, I don't have it now, what can I do? Don't stress, there's always, it's about the destination, not, I mean, in addition to the destination, the journey is also just as important, right? So there are multiple ways to get to where you want to be. And again, in the chat, I've put your pathway options that can be a variety of them. And the most popular one, I will say, for our vet science students that want to come into vet science but didn't actually qualify at first for vet science, that is to actually find their way into a program like the Bachelor of Vet Tech or a Bachelor of Science, and do about a year in that program, do exceedingly well, and then apply into the vet science program. Unfortunately, you can't take any credit with you. That's just the way the program is structured. You will simply need to do the 5 years in the vet science, however long it took you prior to that. Okay, so that's some of the pathway available for you. We also have a foundation studies provider, but it's not as fancy as Monash. You have a nice little name. Ours is just called UQ College. Okay, so that's our foundation studies provider. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you. It's nice to hear that, it's not the end if you don't qualify for direct entry. So we've heard from both Ananti and Gumian that it's not easy to get into these two programs, but both of them are surely meaningful professions. So what's next after graduating? Maybe Ananti, can you tell us more about accreditation for the pharmacy program and how graduates can register to practice as a pharmacist, please?
So basically, our pharmacy program is recognized by the Australian Pharmacy Board, as well as Malaysia Pharmacy Board and Singapore Pharmacy Board. As long as student graduate the Bachelor of Pharmacy with honors, that's being recognized. So once they are done, obviously they have to do the intern and then practice as a pharmacist. The most important thing is the recognition of the degree. So that's very important. And as you know of, for Monash University, those who actually have some financial constraint, they can actually consider our Monash Malaysia campus in Subang Jaya. We do offer the Bachelor of Pharmacy program at that particular campus. So students have the option to actually study either the 4 years at our campus, or they can actually opt to do 2 years in Monash Malaysia and transfer to our Parkville campus in Melbourne for 2 years. So either way, all these program, like I mentioned, the accreditation is more important. Just recognized by, for the Monash Malaysia, it's recognized by the Australia and the Malaysia Pharmacy Board, but not the Singapore Pharmacy Board. So just take note of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ananti. So similar to pharmacy, vet science also requires accreditation to practice in Australia and elsewhere in the world. So Gurian, can you please share with us more about this, including how students can register to practice as a vet?
Yeah, so typically if you're going to register to practice as a vet, whether in Australia or beyond, there are ways in which that you will need to register yourself as an accredited vet in whichever country you are. And similar in a way to the pharmacy program at Monash, it is again all about the recognition and accreditation that comes with this degree. And as previously mentioned, being a triple accredited degree pretty much allows you to practice anywhere in the world. In terms of your career prospects, it is of course a program designed specifically so you can become a vet. In other words, practice vet medicine, and in most cases perform, you know, very mainstream surgery, including desexing animals and basic other forms of surgery, not necessarily the specialist type of surgery. For that, typically you will need additional training beyond your time. And in terms of your career, for those of you who are thinking how you go about doing that, well, there are a few ways that vets become vets, right? You can, of course, find your way into working for a much larger vet clinic or vet hospital. It's very, very popular, especially here in Australia, to start your own vet practice, a private business. Or of course, you buy a franchise. You buy a franchise, a well-known, well-branded chain of vet clinics, and you are the franchise owner, but you're also the vet that practices in that clinic. Okay, so those are the avenues. Now, on top of that, I do want to say something. We see that definitely in a lot of our vets. So those are of course the vets that choose to continue in domesticated animals. So your pets, largely dogs and cats. Then again, don't forget that vets also need to take care of the much larger animals, some kept in our zoos, in our sanctuaries, our livestock animals. And so vets also find their way into those sorts of industries. But then more importantly, going into the future, and a lot of, and I guess that's why our vet students are quite well placed. A lot of the academics that teach into our vet science program are, of course, themselves vets, and in some cases practicing vets. But we also have a lot of epidemiologists amongst our vet academic community. So if you think of COVID-19, you have all of the doctors who are epidemiologists that can predict spread and offer advice on biosecurity and quarantine and decisions made about how we manage COVID-19. In the same way, vets do the same for zoonotic disease. I mean, COVID-19 is very likely a zoonotic disease, right? So in other words, a disease that affects human but transmitted by an animal. And a lot of the upcoming pandemics, I promise you COVID-19 will not be the last. We will see transmitted from animals, largely because there's just more and more people in the world and more animals that we've produced. So we do see a lot of our vets finding themselves in those careers as well, where they're more research focused, more analytical rather than vet practice, but you need a background in vet practice to actually reach there. Okay, so whether you're becoming a diagnostic pathologist, so somebody suddenly there's an outbreak of something and you're the vet that's been asked to diagnose what the disease is. Some of our vets do that, or if you consulted on what's the best way to manage this virus X being transmitted from this animal Y. Okay, our vets also find themselves in those sorts of careers.
That sounds really interesting. So on the topic of careers, would you be able to share with us the expected starting salary of a vet?
I can do that, but I'll be hesitant to do that for anyone outside of Australia. Okay, so of course this is, and largely that's on me because I don't actually know, and I maybe don't know where to find that information. But what I can tell you, sorry, let me unmute myself. And I just want to refer to my notes because I want to get the figures right. That is what I can tell you, is that we're very fortunate in Australia, where we have a lot of data that's freely available. And what we do know is that the entry level sort of salary for a vet practicing in Australia is typically about 1,384 Australian dollars per week. And that amounts to about just over 71,000 per year. Now that is of course an entry-level vet, which is quite a decent salary. And like all jobs, okay, and I'll do a big service to all of the parents standing behind you all now. like all jobs, please don't expect to graduate today and get a high-paying job tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. Okay, everybody does their time. Don't come, and this is my academic hat speaking, don't come to university to get that high-paying job at the end of it, right? You come to university because you are interested in the philosophy of learning. And while we train you to become a vet, we also train you to be a critical thinker, a creative thinker, and a problem solver. And those are the skills that you're going to take wherever you go in the future. So I know I've deviated slightly, but I guess what I want to say is that you will find yourself, right? You're job hunting, and sometimes you just need to start somewhere, right? You just need to start somewhere. We're fortunate, especially in a place like Australia, where starting salaries relative to the rest of the world are quite high, and it only goes up from there. Okay, so think about it that way. So starting salary about 71,000 per year, but then of course, as you progress on in your career and eventually become more and more independent and more specialized as a vet, you find yourself probably earning more and more after that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So how about for pharmacists, please, Ananthi? What's the average? I mean, the starting salary for pharmacists?
I think this question is namely for the finance minister at home. Mom and dad would like to know what's the return of investment that they have done. So the average pharmacy salary in Australia, I do agree, I will be able to advise the one in Australia. So if you go through, there are so many links that are able to advise you, but the average salary will be approximately about 93,000 per year. That's about $47 per hour. But like Ron said, the entry-level position, you always start very low. It's about 75,000 per year. But obviously, once you gather the work experience and, when you move on, good news, you would be able to make up to 120,000 per year. But obviously, that will take years of experience.
And also disclaimer, this is before tax, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that applies for
thanks
both
for the
of us.
reminder. Yes, of course.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so one last question from me for Ananthi, because I think Gurion already mentioned this. So it's actually obvious that studying pharmacy will lead you to become a pharmacist. Studying vet science will allow you to become a vet, but what other options are there? So maybe Ananthi, can you tell us more about other career options for pharmacy graduates?
This is pretty exciting because, for most of the pharmacists, they do, there's a perception that they always end up in community pharmacies, hospitals, and other healthcare. But I got this very interesting story as one of our alumni, actually a pharmacist graduate. Her name is Kathy Reid. She's an award-winning businesswoman entrepreneur that has basically she has played a very significant role in emerging digital health, within the area. She's actually the co-founder of Australia Epic Group. Epic Group is actually it's also a collaboration with Epic Good Foundation. One of the thing about Kathy is that she actually kind of like involved a lot more with cancer care, say radiation, as well as slate head chemotherapy, whereby she have actually invested a little bit more on the Icon Group, which is the Australia's largest dedicated cancer care provider, and also have expanded their footprint with in Singapore, and also the radiation partnership in China. And she also have done an opening of an integrated cancer center in New Zealand. So that's a very success stories that we have with one of our pharmacy students. So it's just not being a pharmacist. Like I said, she's an award-winning entrepreneur. Hence we are very proud of her.
Yeah, good to know. It's good to know that you're not just set on one career path your whole life. So thank you, Ananti and Gurian. I think I have no further questions, but I'm sure students have some for you. So maybe we can go on and look at some of them now. Let's see. So here we have, okay, so we have a student asking what's the difference between pharmacy and pharmaceutical science. I think we already answered that one. So let's go on to the next one. Would a master's degree be sufficient to become a pharmacologist? And if so, what is the range of monetary remuneration you would expect?
If they are referring to the 5th year, which I mentioned, the Master of Pharmacy, which they do get paid internship in that particular year, and obviously Australia labor law is pretty well known, whereby there are wages that is being set within that 1 hour, so they will be getting paid within that amount.
Okay, thank you. So the next question I think is for Gurian. So she's asking about animal science. So she's actually interested in courses that she will be able to interact with wildlife animals more. So she wants to know, is animal science better or will vet science be better?
Yeah, so of course we don't have animal science, but we do have wildlife science. So specifically to answer your question, thanks for that. If you find yourself interested in actually interacting with them, almost all of our programs that deal with animals give you that. Okay, whether that's a Bachelor of Science majoring in zoology or marine biology or entomology, the study of insects, or if you're looking at a Bachelor of Wildlife Science or Bachelor of Vet Tech or Bachelor of Vet Science, all of them give you lots and lots of interaction with live animals. And if that's not good enough, you can go and visit the many sanctuaries and zoos that we have in the country. Okay, and there'll be plenty to look at. Okay, so but then you need to ask yourself the question, as much as it is nice to interact with live animals, where do you see yourself doing that as a career? And then that might help you decide where you want to go to. If you want to actually treat and manage animal disease, then of course vet science might be for you. If you are more of a supporting role in the clinic, and you still get to do a lot of interaction with animals and assist their vets with, prep for surgery, simple surgical procedure, including injections and nail clippings and all of that sort of thing. Then maybe the Bachelor of Vet Tech is more suitable for you. If you want to move away from domesticated animals, whether they are pets or livestock, and want to work with actual wildlife, then maybe the Bachelor of Wildlife Science is more suitable for you. So you need to start maybe thinking about where you see yourself in a career, and then work with one of the counselors to figure out the best plan for you. But all of our programs, if you see anything in the course profile that says animal, there's a very good chance you will be interacting with them.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is for Ananti. So Alfred is asking, so how is pharmacy associated with the medicine course? So I think he's asking how is pharmacy related to medicine?
Are they referring to our undergraduate medicine program? Or
I think he may mean that how is how does pharmacy relate to medicine?
Because okay, in Australia it's a little bit different than Malaysia, and I'm not sure about Singapore. Basically, a general practitioner, which is a doctor, and pharmacist, they have two separate roles. So in Malaysia, I do understand when you see a general practitioner, they tend to prescribe you medication as well. But in Australia, it works differently. Like the prescription is given by the doctor, and you tend to seek, further information about the medication and drugs with the pharmacist over. Most of the pharmacies are based at probably at Chemist Warehouse or some of the other location. So it's pretty separate in terms of if they would like to seek certain clarification on some of the drugs that they would like to purchase on. So basically, I would say it's quite separate in terms of studying medicine and pharmacy.
Yeah, I hope that answers your student's question. The next question is also for Ananti. So does pharmacy still have the research aspect, or is it really just the pharmaceutical science that does research?
If students would like to, obviously, you need to study pharmacy in order to practice as a pharmacist. But there are opportunities for you to go into clinical research, further upon completion of the degree. And as you know, pharmaceutical science is purely on research. You are doing a lot of drug discovery and also, in terms of drug development as well. So there are also opportunities to move on with the research eventually.
Okay, I think we have one last question here. I believe actually Ananti has already answered this just now. So she just wants to confirm, I think if she's not taking chemistry and biology as a subject, she will actually still have other ways to get into the pharmacy degree, right?
We don't really require biology. Chemistry is pretty crucial, like chemistry, maths, and English. These are the three subjects that is we need a pass in this 3 subject prereq.
Okay, we have no more questions here. So if everyone else has no more questions, let's just wait and see. Okay, I think we have no more questions. Okay, so for all our audience here, our counselors will follow up with you after this session. So please feel free to check with us if you have more questions. Please also let us know how we can improve our information sessions like these through the survey after this event. So with that, thank you so much to Ananti, Gurian, and Bernard for the insights this evening, and also to all of you students and parents who have taken the time to join us today. We hope you've gotten a much better understanding of the pharmacy program at Monash and vet science program at UQ. So one last thing I just want to say is that we'll be having a final session of our Let's Talk Health Science session on medicine and dentistry on 29th of April, Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. So please feel free to register through the link that we'll provide on the chat box here or on our website if you or someone you know is interested. So thank you again for your time and have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you. Thanks for having us.